What's up, everybody? Welcome back to part 2 of one of my first experiences with having a mentor. And the first episode, I went over this quote that really inspired me, which was, "Your mind arrives at the destination before you do," which then put me down this path of memory lane. And so I'm sharing with you that story. And ultimately, before I went inside the house to go get spiffy clean, I ended off with how I learned, to gravitate or to attract the things you want. You actually have to walk, talk, and act the part, right? So you have to do the actions of the people that have what you want, essentially. You have to think like the people who have what you want. You have to talk like the people who have what you want. You basically have to mentally live as if you were already there. And essentially that was one of the first lessons that I learned from my mentor, but it then led me to remember one of the greatest lessons he taught me about selling. And so I'm gonna share that with you right now. And so if you didn't check out that last episode, don't worry about it. You don't really need to know about that one. This is kind of a separate topic, but the same mentor, original mentor, which is Edgar David. Edgar David's only like a couple years older than me, and we knew each other before we met up again in the sales industry. And Edgar David graduated from college, with a business degree and all that. And so, we had different type of backgrounds, but all in all, he was cool and always looked up to dude because, he had his shit together. He was a real cool dude, real down to earth, real practical person. And even though he was at an executive level, he wasn't too proud to talk to those who were beneath him, right? Like, he didn't act like he knew it all and had it all figured out and was a dick about it. He's real cool. And so he introduced me to a lot of people, made the right connections, basically brought me into the atmosphere that he had. And thus I was able to pick up more and more information through the mentors within that circle, because all those people were at a level that was much higher than I was. And so naturally I started gravitating to the same level that they were. And essentially, I became I even past that level. And you'll get there. But in this episode, what I want to talk about is one of the greatest lessons that he taught me with regards to selling. And ultimately, I want to paint the picture for you. At this time, I was probably maybe about a year in, and I got promoted from a loan officer to what was called a branch manager at the time. Even though we didn't have necessarily a net branch, our division was called national, because we dealt with everyone across the nation. And since we were located here in California, the only difference between us and the net branches was that we never met with our prospects. We never met our clients in person. We did it all over the phone. One of the first call centers in a mortgage company to ever be developed, and I was one of the managers there. And ultimately what happened was Edgar David, who was my mentor, then became an area manager, and thus he was a little bit higher than a branch manager. I was one of the branch managers within his division. And we had a unique situation, and this is going to share with you how this lesson of selling applies not only to people if you meet your prospect in person, but also applies a great deal to those that you never even meet, because it's really just the science of selling. And when I first learned this lesson, it was interesting because it was a completely different method of selling. When I originally started selling, I sucked at it. I was good at talking over the phone. I was good at gaining trust, right? And keeping people on the phone, and ultimately getting them to a position of me pitching them. But, my efficiency, my close ratio was not as strong. And ultimately what I did to offset it was I just talked to more people. And essentially what I was doing was I was looking for the people who didn't necessarily demand as much, right? The laydowns, basically the leads that anyone could close. Like, they were just ready to go. And I learned a valuable lesson from Edgar David on how to revise my process. And ultimately, once I started, applying this lesson, I increased my close ratio dramatically. like literally within 3 to 6 months of learning that method, I became the #1 loan officer in that entire company. And ultimately what it was, we were in a setting, and as he was my manager, he came by the branch and he met with my team, and he gave us an example of how to pick our numbers up. And one of the questions that came from one of my loan officers was, because it was like a myth. This guy was like a unicorn, like, oh man, he came from the net branch. We're stuck here in corporate center. We didn't have any idea of what it was like to be outside of a net branch. Outside of a net branch, you didn't have, the president of the company walking around. Yeah, the CEO of the company walking around. So technically at the corporate center, you naturally had to be on point. You had to be on your game. Whereas a net branch, they had more freedom. They're like, they're the kids who just graduated high school and moved out of their parents' house. They had that much freedom. And we kind of looked at, ultimately these net branches as almost like a dorm room, like, oh man, these are the cool kids. And we asked him, he said, he wanted us to increase our close ratio, of course, as we're one of his branches. And in order to do so, we had to get better at pitching. And he gave us an example. He had one of the loan officers give him a call from one of the cubes and put the other loan officer on speakerphone. And Edgar basically went through the whole process, kind of like, just the inbound, just an actual pitch, not the sales conversation, not the initial conversation, but the actual pitch. And I'll never forget it, because when he did it and when he explained this, there was that aha moment. And you're going to be fortunate to experience a certain limited amount of aha moments. And this is one of the aha moments I had in my life that literally changed the course of my life with regards to sales, because it just taught me. And over the years I've developed it and modernized it and perfected it and crafted it to become my own. But in this example, he had one of the loan officers, and he went over a pitch, and his technique was, in mortgage we have to look at credit reports, and ultimately the difference between his pitch and my pitch, for example, my pitch, I was all about selling, or what I thought was selling. And so, my wording was off and my whole approach was off. Like I went right into numbers, I went right in for the kill, and I never actually framed the mindset of the prospect. I never put him back into that mindset, because this was developed on a 2-call pitch, like a 2-call close. So the first call was the sales conversation, and the second call was the pitch or the presentation, right? So you had the conversation, you had the kind of like the first date, and then you had the second date. The second date is when you scored. And so the first date, you didn't really go over any sales until the second. And we had to do this because we worked for a subprime company, so our rates were abnormally high in comparison to our competitors. And we had mainly our hottest product was an adjustable rate program. And that adjustable rate program had a 2-year prepayment penalty. And so it was very difficult for us to sell, especially when we didn't get to meet our people in person. So we wanted to know how these net branches, his branch, meaning particularly, which was the Brea branch in Brea, California, was doing such great numbers. Like, how do you guys do it? Like we can't figure it out. And we used to blame the fact that we didn't meet our prospects. And Edgar was the one who's like, dude, you don't need to meet your prospects. He confirmed that loan officers in the net branches didn't even meet their prospects, but they were just working there and they were just very efficient. I wanted to be like one of them. And so I was very happy that he was giving this example. But in short, what he did was he framed the mindset first, and he flipped the table. Where the prospects were expecting a pitch, Edgar showed us how to kind of deconstruct their guard. And how he did it was, instead of saying, hey, I got a couple options for you, what he did was he immediately started educating and positioning himself as the authority. And so what he did was he started going over the credit report. So, hey, before I begin, I just want to cover a few things with you that I found on your credit report. If you ever looked at a credit report, the credit bureaus, they have certain comments that they put. Like, you could have a fucking perfect score of 750, right, or 850. You could have a real high score, but credit bureaus are just going to manage to somehow put some sort of negative comment. That's just them. And the negative comment could be something as small as revolving balances are too high on credit card debt. If you looked at a credit report, you'll know what I mean. And so we had an example of someone who had perfect credit, which was not necessarily within our niche, because we were a subprime lender. And so typically our target audience were those who couldn't qualify through a traditional lender, whether it's income or credit or, credit history, things like that. And so what he did was he framed their mindset and put them back in an emotional state by painting the picture. This is one of the first lessons that I learned, and this is why I preach so heavily on you have to frame their mindset. You have to bring them back to an emotional state. And he did that by educating them on the credit report. And so he was going over the credit report. He's like, did you know that their comments to justify their score, this is what they're saying. And ultimately what he did was he built kind of that camaraderie, like the team. Like he positioned himself as us versus them within the pitch, right? And so he's saying like, yeah, I experienced saying this, and TransUnion is even saying this. And what I want to do is I want to help you. And ultimately this is what you do. And all the information he was going over, he learned for free off of a website called FICO.com. And these are just fun facts over credit insight, right? Like how to manage credit, things you could do to boost your credit score. These are just insider information that technically is publicly free, right? It's public free information. But because we work within this industry, we happen to be a little bit more curious or a little bit more attached to these fun facts. Now, because we are aware of these fun facts, we then turned it into inside information. And that was one of the second lesson that he taught me. Is consumers absolutely love insider information. It's like that cheat code that you hear from someone, hey, you want to jailbreak your iPhone? This is how you do it. Like it was the modern day, it was that day's YouTube video, that showed you all the hacks, right? And so he essentially positioned himself as the authority, and then gave inside information. And then he said, I have an idea. What I can do is I can show you how to bring your FICO up to this and remove all these comments from the credit bureaus by resolving their issue. So if they said that credit balance are too high, we had the out and say, okay, well, what we're going to do is pay off this credit card so we can remove this comment, or they can't say this comment anymore, and naturally your FICO score should go up because the credit bureaus didn't have anything to complain. And that was the third lesson, which is basically, hey, I have an idea. When someone says that to you, like, hey, I got an idea. You naturally listen, right? Like it's just something about you. Just instinctive curiosity will make you tune in that much more. Like, well, what's your idea? Like you're just curious. And I was amazed, because this all happened within the first couple seconds, but I was able to see the sequence and it made complete sense to me. And after, he educated about the credit report, he went over the comments, then he said, I have an idea and this is what we're going to do. He basically strategized a game plan of what he's going to do for the prospects. And essentially what he was doing was he was painting a picture for the prospects, which was the solution, making the prospects almost emotionally feel the experience. Meaning that, when he explained, he said that, we're going to give you cash out to pay off this debt. It's going to remove the comments from the credit bureaus. After we remove the comments from the credit bureaus, they'll have nothing to complain about. Your FICO will be higher. You'll be able to apply and qualify for certain things that you don't qualify for today. And at that time, with this refinance, you'll have X amount of monthly savings. This will put X amount of money within your bank per month. And he listed out the benefits, but in a way that the prospect would experience it. And the prospect felt that in order to get that end result, they had to follow this plan that he was painting for them. And ultimately got them buttered up before he even talked about rate and fees, right? He got the prospect so emotionally tied to the result, and he didn't even mention a rate or a fee. And then when he went over the actual pitch of the product, got him all excited, prospect said, okay, cool, well, how do we do it? That was the buy sign, that was it. Like they're ready, they're prime. And he immediately went in, he said, okay, this is how we do it. I'm going to need these documents, gave him a whole list of stipulations or steps and documents that we need. And then said, in order to make sure that we can get you these savings, we need to make sure that we can qualify your loan first. So there's that dangling of the carrot before you say, okay, well, cool, I can get this for you. Never said that. Never said, okay, I can do it. I can get it. It was always to be determined. It was always, well, I got to make sure you can even get this first. This is what I need, blah, blah, blah. So there's always a to be continued, right? To be determined type, if you will. and gave them a list of documents. And since the prospects was so still emotionally attached to the outcome, it was very easy for them to want to gather those documents. So they're already kind of, that momentum was already built. And then said, and if I am able to confirm that and validate that you're able to proceed, what I'm going to do is, we'll begin the process. We're going to be done super fast. And the process time was like maybe 15 days. We're able to get loans done very quick. I think it was like a 7 to 10 day process, super fast, because we're a direct lender. And he said, he started painting the picture ahead of time. He said, by this time in 2 weeks, we'll be completed, and your first payment will not be due until here and there. And started painting again the picture of the result and what will happen. And that taught me the next lesson, was that consumers just want to know that there's a plan, and they want to hear the plan. They don't want to hear pieces of the plan that evolves around price or fees or rate. They just want to hear how it benefits them, what's in it for them. That's ultimately what they're more in tune on. And mind you, during this role play, the loan officer was giving them all kinds of objections, like, oh yeah, well, what's the rate, what's the fee, and he ultimately addressed it, but repelled it in a way where he's all, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to show you. Come on, watch. Let me do this first. So anytime you got an objection, like, hey, what's your rate, what's your fee? Edgar would be like, oh yeah, I'm actually going to email it to you, but first let me confirm something. Kind of addressed it, but then pushed it to the side and took back control of the conversation. And it was very powerful, because usually when we get an objection during a pitch, we want to answer the objection. But ultimately what he was doing is he was just agreeing with the prospect and kept leading them down that path. And so when it came time to go over the numbers, the way he sold it was he was just about payment. So he's all, I can bring your total payment, and he added up the mortgage payment plus all the credit card debt. He said, I can bring your total payment from here and drop it down to here. And then in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll look at refinancing again with a higher FICO, more money in the bank, and would be able to complete and achieve this, and got him sold on the result. And since there was already a proven plan, like a stepping stone, if you will, showing them how they can get to the next level, the prospects were more engaged, they were more invested. And so when the time came to go over the interest rate and the fees, it was easier to digest, because again, they're emotionally already invested to the result. Whereas if it would have went in reverse, where most of our pitches were going, as is actually being done, was that we went over price, rate, and fees at the very beginning, and then started explaining the benefits and the results. And the problem with that is that our method, we had already lost the interest from the prospect, because we went over sensitive information first without buttering them up, without framing their mindset, without putting them back in that emotional state of being, right, of thinking. And so something magical about that happened, where it just clicked, and I was like, oh man, consulting is the new selling. And that's what I'm always preaching, is consulting is the actual new way of selling, and it still is today. And you'd be amazed how many individuals are just about sales, and they're just about churn and burn, and just about hurry up, let's flip a sale, let's go for a sale. And there's a lot of mentors out there saying right now, just go for the sale, charge them the money, and that's supposed to be a closer. That ain't a closer, that's a fucking bully. You're gonna push more away than you're gonna attract. The method that I'm sharing are the methods that I've learned over the course of the last 20 years that does not push them away. It does not bully them. Now granted, there are some prospects that need that aggressive push, but you'll find that most of them don't like that aggressive push, because there are now more options. There are more outlets. We have the fucking internet. We can get quotes from 9 different competitors of yours within the matter of minutes. So you got to be a little bit more, a little bit more savvy. You have to be a little bit more smooth. And this is what I'm going to share with you. So I hope that this helped you. Please leave your comments below. It's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned from a mentor, and to some degree, I still apply it today. It's been developed and modernized and perfected to apply to today's consumers. And so now I'm sharing it with you for free. One of the best aha moments that I've had in my career was that time. And so if you have any questions, please comment below. Or if you have any, takeaways from this episode, or anything that you can take away from this video to help improve, I'd like to know what that is, what your feedback is, what your input is. So I'm looking forward to your comment. Please like and share this video on your YouTube, or on your YouTube. Yeah, share it on your YouTube. But share the video link on your Facebook, on your LinkedIn, email it to your team. Let them know that there is more content. There's organized playlists both on YouTube and Facebook, and you could win with them. All right, I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.